What is going on, my guardian gamers? It is I, Birdman, back with another Destiny 2 setup, and today I'm going to be showing off a really solid Arc Warlock build. Now, if you remember, a couple weeks ago I did an Arc Warlock build using the Crown of Tempest. Really solid setup all around, and I really like it, but I think the exotic that we have for this setup is a little bit more solo player friendly and is really freaking juicy. I took a lot of the feedback that you guys gave from that Arc Warlock build and actually put it over on this. So appreciate y'all for the help. Now, before we get into the video, you can follow me over on YouTube and Twitter at Birdman778. Give a thumbs up on this video and let me know what something you want to see, whether it is Warlock, Hunter, or Titan. Subscribe to the channel and become a member. Now, let's jump right on into this. Now, we always like to highlight what exotic is going to be used for this setup, and that is going to be the Fallen Sunstar. This exotic reads Ionic Conductor. Ionic traces you create move faster and grant you an additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an Ionic trace. So this is a really solid one because, especially on Warlock, Ionic traces are very, very strong, and having something where it's also going to help out your teammates and give them a little bit of extra energy is really nice. But at the same time, again, Ionic traces are freaking awesome because they're able to just travel along the ground and come straight to you, and having those be more efficient is definitely really cool. For the subclass on your super, I recommend Storm Trance. I just think this is a little bit more advantageous, especially with all the Ionic traces we're gonna make. Even though that Chaos Reach is a little bit of a shorter cooldown, you're gonna get a little bit more out of Storm Trance in regards to like damage and everything like that. For your ability, I recommend a Healing Rift, so they're able to pop off those easy extra little moments of healing for yourself. But it's also going to work with one of the aspects we're going to use for this setup. For your melee, I recommend Ball Lightning. Personally, I'm a big fan of it. The Chain Lightning is definitely pretty cool, but at the same time, I think the Ball does just a little bit more damage, especially when you're amplified, which we're going to be amplified for pretty much the entire time that we're using this entire setup. And then finally, for the grenade, Pulse Grenade, definitely the best. I have no notes on it. It is just perfect. When it comes to our aspects, first off, Electrostatic Mind is going to be a really important one to have. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace. Collecting Ionic Trace makes you amplified. So again, those traces are first off going to give you ability energy, which is really nice. They're able to seek along the ground and come straight to you. Again, the Fallen Sunstar is going to make those even better. But again, being able to constantly just become amplified from picking those up, which we're constantly going to be doing, is really, really nice. But we're also going to be constantly jolting targets with our grenade, blinding targets with our weapon that we're going to be using for this setup. So you have so many different ways of getting those Ionic traces. And second would be Arc Soul. Casting your rift creates an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of you. Allies can pass through the rift and get an Arc Soul. Your rift charges faster when allies are near, and while amplified, your Arc Soul are supercharged and gain increased fire rate. So we're gonna be constantly having this, honestly. It's really freaking awesome. Again, especially for the fact that we're able to pop our rift as much as we humanly want, because we're gonna be constantly activating those Ionic traces and getting some really easy ability energy. For your fragments, first off, I recommend Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to create Ionic Trace. There's an exotic that we're going to be using for this setup that is really, really cool. It was actually introduced in one of the seasons as a seasonal weapon. We'll talk about that here in a second. And it works really well with not only picking up Ionic Traces, but also taking advantage of making them as well. So I really like it. Next is going to be Spark Shock. Your Arc Grenade jolts targets. Again, really good to have that jolting, especially for the fact that it's going to not only be able to do a lot more damage in area of effect around an enemy, but also for the fact it's able to stun overload champions. So again, adding a little bit of endgame content to this build. Next is Spark Vions. Defeating jolted target creates an Ionic Trace. Again, pretty easy. Being able to just get grenade kills and get Ionic Traces from that is really huge. Spark of Beacons. While you're amplified, your Arc Special Weapon blow creates a blinding explosion. So constantly shooting around our weapon is going to just blind targets. This is really good for just like close ad clear and everything like that, just because you're going to be constantly able to just keep enemies stunned, jolted, and all those fun things. Now, I mentioned a certain seasonal weapon is really good with this, and that's going to be the Centrifuge. I really like this from the Season of the Deep. First off, its intrinsic trait, Overcharge Capacitator. Sprinting, sliding, and firing this weapon builds up a temporary electrostatic charge, increasing range and reload speed. Final blows with high charge cause explosions, and maximum charge explosions blind targets. So no matter what, we're going to have that blinding effect constantly going on. Really, really solid, and I enjoy getting to use this. But also the regenerative motion is actually really cool. Gradually reloads this weapon as you're sprinting. So essentially meaning that all you gotta do is just clear out a couple ads, do a little like spin around like that, and you could have a full mag really soon. Also, if you get the catalyst, it's pretty solid. While amplified, this weapon gradually gains overcharge. So it's just gonna be able to overcharge on its own without even doing anything with it. Now, when it comes to the mods for this setup, first off, on your helmet, I recommend a harmonic siphon. And also I like to put on ashes to acid so that we're able to get plenty of super energy from our grenades. You're gonna be constantly chucking grenades with the setup, so it's definitely really good. And if you had to put on like one more slot, again, I had to just because I have terrible Warlock armor all around. I don't play Warlock ever, so I don't have like high stat armor or anything like that. So to make sure I have that 100 resilience, I had to make some sacrifices and stuff. But I'd recommend a dynamo for this last spot, just purely off the fact you're going to be casting your rift a lot around enemies, so getting that free super energy is definitely useful. Next up on our gloves, I recommend a grenade kickstart to constantly check those grenades and ensure we have those ready. A impact induction, causing damage with your melee attack, reduces your grenade cooldown, ensuring that we're going to get that back. And finally, boltering detonation grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a grenade. Again, essentially creating a really good flow amongst all your abilities. On our chest piece, a charged up, so we're able to get an extra stack of armor charges. And then I went with a concussive dampener and a harmonic resistance. The harmonic resistance pretty much just because, again, terrible stats, stuff like that, just to fill in that last slot. On our legs, I went with a stacks on stacks so that we're able to use every armor charge or ionic trace as 2. And you might be saying, Bird, you don't get armor charges from ionic traces. What do you mean? You actually can. With the elemental charge, collecting an ionic trace has an escalating chance to give an armor charge. So again, really good way to do that, especially for the fact we're going to be constantly creating ionic traces with this setup. And then finally, on our class ability item, a distribution so that we're able to get a cooldown near targets, a reaper so that we're able to get a free orb whenever we activate our rift, and then powerful attraction, pulling all those orbs whenever we activate our rift. When it comes to the artifact, first off, obviously you want to get that arc orb, really important. In the fourth column, I recommend overload machine gun because I use a machine gun with the setup. It's pretty solid all around. An elemental fury for more damage against stunned champions, and our refreshing pickups. Whenever we pick up a tangle or elemental orb, we get energy for our least powered ability. And finally, in the final column, a monochromatic maestro for the extra damage boost on our weapons, as well as an elemental munitions so that whenever we get final blows with an elemental orb, we can get some heavy bricks. I've been mentioning on all these setups how these are going to be endgame viable. First off, on the barrier side of things, the centrifuge, perfect. It's an AR, it works this season. Later on, obviously, we might have to adjust some things, but at least for right now, that works. On an unstoppable, we're able to get that from the blinding effect on the centrifuge, or just in general, if we're using an arc special weapon with the fragments we're using, or again, I always just have on the fusion just because it's super useful. And then finally, overload those jolting effects or a machine gun. Thanks so much for watching the video. Hope you guys really enjoy it. Again, trying to keep the positivity up in these weird times, being a Destiny fan and stuff. We're getting slow little information as we go, so hopefully we still see that update on the 28th at the end of the month, but I don't really have any reason to think that they're not going to. There is word that they're planning on giving us something a little bit special, since we're likely going to have a 6-month season 23 coming up here soon, so we shall see what happens. But until then, again, make sure to follow me over on YouTube and Twitter at Birdman778. Give a thumbs up on this video, comment down below, definitely those two things because it helps us out so much in the algorithm, as well as subscribing and becoming a member. Thank you so much. Hope you guys have a great night, day, whatever it may be.